From the grind to the glory, one man's journey proves that heart, hustle, and determination change the game. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., where adversity is met head-on and champions are made. Here's George.
Welcome to Catch as Catch Can. I'm George Tinsley Sr., former professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and your host. This is a space where we sit down with leaders who face real challenges, learned real lessons, and kept moving forward.
Turning obstacles into opportunity.
Hello, today we have John Francis, with us today. John brings over 30 years of franchising expertise as a former franchisee, franchisor, investor, and board member for major brands like Sports Clips and Culligan Water. Growing up in his family's 1,000-unit salon business before its merger into Regis Corporation, John now works as a top franchise advisor, speaker, and helping systems see what they don't see to reach their peak success. Welcome, John. We're glad to have you with us today on our program.
Yay. Thank you, George.
How about that for a welcome, huh?
I love it, man. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Good to be here with you. I really do appreciate it.
Well, we're honored to have you and to hear about your growth and from where you started to where you are today. This is Catch as Catch Can, and it's my theme that talks about turning obstacles to opportunities in my most recent book. And I'd like our guests to just tell the audience about how it all started for you, some of the obstacles that you started off with that helped form your career, and then we'll dive into what you're doing today and how the audience can get in contact with you and get some of your expertise. So why don't we just kick it off? Give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. Well, thank you, George. So I'm in Minnesota. I'm the youngest of 5 kids in my family. So today I'm married and I've got 2 lovely daughters. But when I was a young kid, I grew up in a family business. My dad was a barber cutting hair here in the 50s before I was even born. And he was, let's just say, frustrated barber because he said, it's going to take me forever, one head at a time, right? There's got to be a better way. Long story short, he franchised barbershops in the 60s before I was born. Again, the business started earlier, and he was a real pioneer. My dad and my mother together started a barber salon franchise, and it was a kind of an entrepreneur, all in, everything going. And he worked really, really hard, and he had some good people who worked really, really hard. And my dad had high integrity and high energy, and he was extremely motivated. He grew up really poor and didn't have his dad, died when he was 12, and had a lot of adversity. And he was the oldest in his family. So anyway, he was a go-getter and a real committed hard worker. And by the time I was growing up as the youngest of 5, things were already going. And I thought, everybody works like this? Doesn't everybody own 2 or 3 businesses? Isn't everything a franchise? And everybody works for themselves except the people that work for us. So you're used to what you grow up with. So right. I grew up in an entrepreneurial, I would call it chaos. I mean, to be honest, now that I'm much older and can kind of reflect on what was going on, man, it was nuts. Yeah. So my dad was a great guy. Everybody loved him. Everybody knew him. He was very high integrity, high energy, very gregarious, just a nice guy who trusted people and was, obviously my mentor, my first role model. And again, as the youngest kid, it was a busy time. There was always something that needed work. There was plenty of work to do. I was mowing grass and painting fences and filling dumpsters, sweeping the warehouse. I was loading retail product on the shelves, keep the shampoo and the conditioner, turn the labels, get the lighting just right. We learned a lot because we had a lot of family business going on, and it was a lot of fun. I was lucky to be where I was and when I was. So my dad was fantastic, but he had cancer, right? It's a long story around that, but he was sick for a long time, and he had the kind of cancer that was, you couldn't really treat it. You could just remove it. So he had it like 22 surgeries
Wow.
over a 15-year period from when I was in 6th grade till I was, out of college. I mean, it was just nuts. So his cancer story was kind of a roller coaster, right? He'd go in and they'd clear it out, and we thought, oh, great, he's good now, he's going to beat it. And then, a few months later, or a year later, they'd find it, and it's like, oh, geez, go back in. And so that created a lot of chaos and stress and anxiety, and it was not easy. But a couple of things that happened along the way is lessons I learned is that he had to hire executives to help run the business because he was the entrepreneur founder, and he was fantastic as a founder, but he did not like budgets and forecasts and accountability and risk. Those are things he never really thought about.
Right.
He just did it, right? And so I watched him do that, which is fantastic. But I also realized that professionals, the company got big enough where they could hire, marketing people and finance people and training specialists who knew what they needed to do. And then an executive, a president who really knew how to put in budgets and structure and reduce the chaos to more structured, organized, professionally managed. So I got to watch that. I got to be part of that. Fascinating experience. And then towards the end of my dad's life, when we knew he wasn't gonna beat it, like we all had to accept the reality, geez, he's gonna die, right? So my mother, God bless her, she's like, well, we got to do what's the right thing to do. So she went back to school and learned financial questions and leadership questions, and she beefed up. They together hired and improved our board of directors. So they brought some real talent in at the very top of the organization. And the board of directors is, they make decisions. They have fiduciary responsibility. They're really in charge, representing the owners, which were my family, and then we had outside shareholders. I mean, it was we were NASDAQ listed, publicly traded back in the 90s,
Wow.
So
Okay.
pretty serious operation. So I watched the board get improved. I watched my mom sort of succeed him as chairman. We had a CEO, we had an executive team, and I was on that leadership team. I was one of the vice presidents, working my way through the process, and I was working my tail off, like we always did, right? So I was up for it. And then so we sort of survived my dad's entrepreneurism, right? I mean, we benefit. He started and he had a lot more wins than losses, but we learned from a lot of stuff. And then when things were kind of rolling and going in the 90s, then my brother died. I had a 10-year-old, he was 10 years older than me, my brother Joe. He died in a car accident, which was obviously unexpected. It was just a couple of years after my dad had passed. So we're just getting our legs again, getting things stabilized again. And then my brother dies. And so that really upset the apple cart, right? My mom was like, oh, Jesus, she kind of disappeared for a little while to go deal with, we all did. I mean, our whole family was put through the ringer, and it was a very difficult situation. He was in the middle of a divorce that was pretty awful, and he was struggling in his business. He was a franchisee in our system, so that wasn't easy, and it was complicated. Anyway, again, long story short, we went through a real difficult period. We came out of it. Mom said, I want to retire. She said, I'm done. I've done my work here. Let's go. Get me out of this job. So again, the board doing a great job, and the team was doing great. I mean, the business was really performing well. The 90s, we had a lot of good strategies. We'd done international, we'd done mergers and acquisitions. We had a thing with Walmart. We were putting our salons inside. I mean, we had a lot of momentum and a lot of high performance. So it was a good business to sell. We put it out there as a secondary offering and try to liquidate some of my mother's holdings and let her retire, right? But it turned out we sold the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was totally unexpected. So for me, I'm the young heir apparent, I guess. I've been working since I could, right, to really perform and do everything and get to that level. And then all of a sudden, my dad's gone and my brother's gone, and now the company's gone. Like, wow. So it was a series of, losses, really, tragedies, if you think about it. And then, I can't really complain. I mean, the outcome was, financially well, for the family and everybody else, but my career path was completely changed, right? And so what do? You get help. I had a good group. I actually had a peer group of other businesses that I had been part of a group. I found a good therapist, honestly, to deal with some of the grief and some of the decisions and like, now what do I do? So anyway, it didn't take me too long, but I understood my blessings. How lucky am I? What have I learned? What have I seen? What have I done? What have I experienced? And what a legacy my dad and my brother and my mom left, a tremendous trail of success and integrity and respect.
Right.
And just so I sat down and said, well, I had to stay out of the hair business for a while. I had a non-compete, which was easy. I never cut hair. I never got that far, right? But I knew how to run those salons, and franchising is what I really learned. And retail services, consumer, services. So I kind of knew what I really knew and what I didn't know. It was not hard for me to admit, well, I got to stick to what do I know. And so I went on and did a few more brands as franchisee, as a franchisor, as a developer. What I learned, George, is I got really good at, I come into a system and I'd look around, I'd ask some questions, and I was just curious, right? And I would say, well, what about this? And how do you handle that? And have you seen this or have you done any of that? And I would just ask questions. And I realized that what I grew up with was a pretty fantastic example of how to do it well and how to do it right and how to create results where everybody wins. I mean, everybody wins. When it's done right, franchising, everyone involved has mutual success. It's a powerful combination. So having that knowledge and that mindset and that reputation and that work ethic, all of that kind of rolled into me being able to do a few of my own deals. And so I did 5 more deals on my own in the next 10 years.
In the salon business or in a different?
In franchising, but not in salons, but different franchise systems. And I'm not a startup guy. Like I didn't say, hey, I'm going to franchise this pen, that I didn't have a new thing. I would find someone who had one and said, well, look, if you did this and maybe that, and let's talk about that, we could take it up. And
Gotcha.
So I would help somebody else take their brand to that next level and using franchising, because that's what I really understood was the franchising and the people and the relationships and the mindset and the attitudes of successful franchise. So anyway, I was lucky and good, worked really hard for a long time. And then along then I had gotten married and we had our family and things were changing and our family stuff, we had stabilized from my mom, and I have 3 sisters. And so we kind of managed all of that in a family office. And I got to do a lot of wonderful things, right? New opportunities that I never expected, because originally I thought I'm going to run this family business. Well, things change, right? So the lesson I learned, George, from all of this, I mean, and then I guess to finish the story, for the last probably 10 years, maybe a little more, I sold my last operating company where I had people and day-to-day kind of activity. I sold everything and I serve on boards. So now I guess I'm a professional board member. I call myself an advisor, right? I'm not a certified anything. I'm not a trained whatever. I just have a ton of experience. I can ask really good questions in a constructive way, and connect the dots. I can, like in the bio, I can see what's missing or what's coming. I can predict your future if you're a franchise system, right? I can anticipate and try to help either fix the problems or avoid the problems, which is very valuable, right? So I like to help other people with their deal. And the lesson I learned is really from my dad and from other mentors. I had other mentors. Obviously, when he died, I mean, I kept learning from other people around me. And so I was lucky to have those people. And, I learned that nothing beats hard work and high integrity. If you have those 2 things, you'll be fine. Hard work and high integrity. So my dad had that, and I learned that, and I saw that, and I lived that. And I saw people who didn't have that, and I saw those results. I mean, I saw a lot of things. I got to learn and observe and understand it. So, and then the other piece, I guess, is really just, in franchising in particular, is that mutual benefit. When you can create an opportunity that creates an opportunity that creates another opportunity, and everybody who participates can share in that benefit, is so powerful. And like I said, I mean, that's hardwired into my I thought everything was that way, and so I see the world that way, and I see it when it works and I see it when it doesn't, and I can try to help, make things better. So I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do what I do, and it's been a lot of fun, and I love what I do. It's not work. It doesn't feel like work. I mean, my wife says, "Oh, you're not retired, not even close." But so I serve on some boards. I do some coaching. I do these mastermind groups. Now, when I was I started when I think I was 19 in a mastermind group, and I was in a group, George, for 25 years.
Wow.
Fantastic. So other business owners, in a regular cadence, every month we'd meet for half the day and sort things out. And that guy, the founder, was a friend of my dad's. His name was Norm, and Norm was a great mentor to me, and I learned a lot from Norm. And he franchised. He wanted to franchise that business, so I helped him. Again, one of those examples where the guy had the business, he was already sort of franchising. I helped him really franchise it, and then sold the business. But I got to stay on as a member. So now I'm doing mastermind groups or peer groups for franchisors, for the executives and the suppliers and the people who are professionals in the industry that want help and want new ideas and want a little bit of accountability, but don't want to pay for a big executive or really get anybody complicated in their business. I like to say, George, I can make an impact without getting involved.
Right.
I want to help other people with their business. I don't want to make the decisions. I don't want to be responsible. I'm unattached to the outcome. I want you to do your job better. Right. That's what I tell my clients. So I'm
John, let me just, excuse me, and great story. And as you talk about your dad in the beginnings, my history in the franchising area comes from working with the Colonel himself, and how he got started off, how he franchised and so forth. I won't get too deep into that, but I'm interested in your dad when he first started franchising. How was that set up? What kind of agreement, what kind of a system was set up?
Well, I'll tell you what I know from the history and from the stories is it was almost accidental. So the story goes that my dad was the barber cutting hair, and he set up a new barber shop. He had his old barber shop, and then he kept that, but he opened a new, like a high-end appointments and full service, and the new model, and that worked. So he built another one on the other side of town, and that worked. So he built a third one, again, another side of town. We're in the Twin Cities, right? So he had 5 barbershops. He had sold his original store, and he was focused on the new model, and he had 5. And he said, I was making more money than I ever did, and I wasn't cutting hair anymore. I was now running the business. The managers were running the stores and cutting the hair and everything else. He said those 5 managers came to him and said, Joe, we see what's going on here. You've got a great business. We love the business. We want a piece of the action. We cut us in on the deal. We want to be partner. And he's like, wait a minute. These are my stores. You work for me. I did this. I put everything into this. This is mine. Let me work on an alternative. Someone suggested, why don't you franchise it? He said, what's a franchise? So at that time, George, this would have been late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
They were hotels, gas stations, and restaurants that were franchise systems, not much else. And so he took those 5 managers and he made them 5 franchisees in new markets. So he sent one guy to north, one guy south, one guy east, 2 guys went west. They went around the Midwest here, Wisconsin, Iowa, around the area, and they opened 5 stores. So he kept the original 5. He said, these are mine, but you guys go here, one go there, one go. So he opened 5 more with the managers who knew the business and knew the brand and had the culture and had everything. So they worked out. And they really started growing in their market. So they would build a second one or a third one. And then other barbers that were cutting hair, they're like, look at these guys. What are they building? It's a real business. Mm-hmm. The old barber model was cutting hair. The new barber model was owning a salon with multiple barbers and then multiple salons and really creating scale. And it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So he changed the industry. He's in the Barber Hall of Fame. Actually was recognized for his contribution. And my mother and father are in the Franchise Hall of Fame for
Wow.
what they did with franchising. Our techniques, our strategies, the things we did with our brand were so innovative and successful that other brands adopted those techniques for development and support and training, and things that we did in the salons, they picked up in printing and automotive repair. I mean, different franchises use the same techniques to build and grow.
Mhm.
So I know Colonel Sanders is in that same Hall of Fame
Yeah.
for franchising with Ray Kroc and a lot of the old founders of big brands, Domino's and Holiday Inn, and those early franchise systems really pioneered the industry and set the standard of here's how you can do it to
Mhm.
be successful. So my folks were a great example. And I think my dad, in those early days, he didn't know what he was doing. He was just driven and motivated and a hard worker, but he had good people. And he
Mhm.
knew how to connect and get them to commit to him because he committed to them. That relationship was so intense. Like there was no way they were going to fail. They
Right.
were just and God bless them. I wasn't even around right when this was all happening. By the time I showed up, there was a big office and there were stores all over, and my dad was in the airplane all the time. And I mean, that was anyway, it was when he started, there really wasn't much to look at as an example, but he figured it out. They figured it out together. Really, there's a lot of history there, and decades later, it worked out, and everyone who was part of it really was wildly successful. So
I think one of the key things that you mentioned that holds true with a lot of those early guys that got started, the Ray Kroc, the Colonel, etc., was the integrity. They all kind of got into the franchising, and not necessarily that was their intention, but they got into it because of some hardship that came about for each one that caused them to either, with the Colonel, let's say,
mhm.
redirecting the highway, which took a lot of the initial business that he had and away from him. And so, in order to make up for the loss of guests, customers, etc., he started reaching out to those people who had come through and expressed a lot of interest in his KFC chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken, if you will. Wasn't that formal name at that time, but he developed his own small system, then obviously sold to John Y. Brown and Jack Massey, and they took it to a whole new level. But maintaining, as he maintained his position within KFC, that integrity that he established with those early franchisees that were paying 5 cents for every 9 pieces of chicken that was sold, because the chicken was cut into 9 pieces at that time, versus that's what he was doing versus 8 pieces. It really sparked the whole franchise industry, as long as they kept him involved, with the white suit, the bow tie, and being
Yeah,
able to what's on my line and so forth. But it's
yeah.
very interesting in how your dad, your family kind of eased through this and maintained control and relationships where Ray Kroc and the Colonel kind of stepped aside, if you will, and let's let someone else take it to the next level. But that franchise system that was developed, as you speak of it, and how you're working through it, taking the integrity piece versus some of the corporate, the way that the corporations deal with franchisees. So it has the ups and downs, the suits, and and on all
Yeah.
those things that pop up. Yeah.
Well, I George, I'm a regular kind of ordinary guy, right? I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I know what motivates me and what doesn't motivate me. And I think ego and greed destroy a lot of great businesses.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Yeah.
If you can, I think it was, one of the old gurus said, if you take care of enough other people, you'll be taken care of, right? You help others get what they want, you'll get what you want. And
Hmm.
so I'm a believer in that kind of a mindset.
Yeah.
Just
So
try to help.
when you speak of yourself as the franchise truth teller, is this what you're speaking? Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking. Yeah.
yeah. So my name is John Francis. I was little Johnny, right, growing up, the youngest. So everyone called me Johnny Francis. So one of my good friends here in Minneapolis, we were at conference, and we're all checking in, getting our name tags, and how you been, what's going on, how you doing. And this guy says, Johnny Francis. He said, when I see you here, I think Johnny Franchise. And so I laughed and he laughed and everybody around us had a good laugh. And so the nickname stuck, right? Someone has to give you a nickname. So I'm Johnny Franchise because I guess that's who I am. It's what I do. But what I think, my thing is, George, is to help other people use franchising to find success, for whether they're the franchisor, whether they're the franchisee, the operator, or whether they're a service company that's providing products or services or helping that brand grow and improve. So I want to help other people have success. When I can do what I can do for others, the ripple effect that can be created through a good brand that's what my motivation is. I can see my fingerprints on some of the systems that I've been part of as a board member or an advisor or a coach or whatever. Years later, you can see like, oh yeah, we moved that strategy this way, and instead of going here, they went there, and because of that, they had this wonderful, whatever the outcome. There's no one right answer. Franchising is complicated. People are complicated. Businesses are complicated. There's always competition and all kinds of changes and things. You have to innovate and manage through all of the chaos. But I guess because I grew up with that, thinking it's normal, and with the foundation of a very successful franchise model. So I help other people do their work through their business. And to me, that's the most rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Let's pull up your website here and see where some of our listeners can reach out and get in contact with you, and you kind of walk us through your website here, John, if you will.
Well, my website address is johnnyfranchise.com. That's my brand. That's my name, John Francis. And my service company is Next Level Franchise. So these are some of the services, some of the buttons, some of the products. I've written some workbooks and stuff that we basically give away for people. Common things that franchise systems get stuck with. I see it all the time. It's like, well, here's a little piece of work that could help you get unstuck with this piece, these common obstacles and situations. And then there's information and speaking and the groups and the other stuff that I like to do. And then, George, I have some good support people who make me look better, I think, than I deserve in some of this stuff. So
we all do, John.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. I do what I'm best at, and then I hire other people to help me. And I can see I need some help. There's always stuff that's changing. But yeah, Johnny Franchise is my name. I'm not hard to find. And I tell people, you can go to my website. My phone number is there. I pick up the phone. I answer if I know who it is. Of course, I answer. Right. If I'm not talking to someone else, I usually answer because I'm curious. I love to learn and connect with people and share ideas. And if I can help, great. If not, I'll point you in the right direction. And,
Johnny, I was a professional athlete, school teacher, and of course went to KFC as a trainer working with the Colonel in my early days. And so I have a lot of professional athlete friends and a lot of folks that are in business that want to become or want to take their business to a franchise level. They want to, a lot of people don't understand franchising, but they feel since they've got something that's working, they want a franchise. What would you say to some of those listeners, on either side, some of the basketball professional athletes that looking to get in? What would you say to them?
My advice is take your time and do your homework. Right? There's not one right way to do this. You really got to know the people you're getting involved with and make sure it's a stable franchise. When someone says, I'm going to franchise this, I've got this, I can't wait, I'm going to franchise that thing, I say, hold on. I say, understand franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. There's a bunch of states that have state regulation. So there's lawyers involved, there's disclosures involved, there's audited financials that you have to organize every year. You have to go through this. So before you start franchising, it's a big commitment. And what I usually say is, if you've got one that's a successful unit, that's great. Let's build a second one and prove the model again. And then let's build a third one, because now you've learned something about how to get these units open and how to structure and how to open and marketing and finance and construction and training and all the rest. So the first one's an accident. The second one's a coincidence. The third one now is a pattern. Now you're ready to think about franchising. Should you franchise or not? Well, not before you've done a few of your own. Don't experiment on your franchisees, right?
Right.
Franchisees expect that a system is proven and developed, and it's going to change. It's going to get better, right? It's all you want it to grow and continue to improve. You don't want to be making drastic changes because they didn't know what they were franchising. So a lot of franchises go too fast, too early. That's sadly common. And so I would tell people, take your time, do your homework, build carefully, slowly. The first 5 set the pace for the next 50, and those 50 set the pace for the next 500. So there are points of inflection where a brand will change its sort of structure and support, and the economic models change, and it gets more interesting as you scale, but it's hard to do. It looks easy, but it never is. And so I would say be careful, do your homework. And then on the franchisee side, kind of the same thing is, once you sign that contract and write your check, I mean, they're easy to get into, they're hard to get out of. So it's, be careful that you know what you're doing and that you're ready to do whatever it takes, and you've got the right people and enough money and the right real estate, or the right, whatever the model is based on, what are the success to that brand, and do you know what they are and how you can optimize your unit to be successful using their systems. I say to the franchisees, your job is to implement, not experiment. If it's not working, you should call the franchise system and say, hey, what am I doing wrong here? What do I need to do? Not work harder or figure it out. The answer should be, what am I missing? Help me implement your system so I can be successful. That's a franchisee mindset, is to execute that model, the whole model, consistently. Usually it's service, which means people. First you got to operate it, get a good location, put the right people in there. Then once it's running, then you drive marketing. Sometimes operators, if they don't advertise enough and they think, well, I'll open the doors, they should come right in. Well, that doesn't happen. So you need to open the doors and they will come in, but then you got to pour some gas on that fire with marketing and advertising and promotion and community engagement. And you've got to do the things locally that the brand is not going to do for you. That's your job as the local franchisee, is the marketing and engage. So if you can get the service and then drive in the volume, you'll build a reputation, and then that business goes. I'd say build another one across town or somewhere nearby, and start building your collection. But now you got to manage. It's more people, it's more running around. I mean, it's like anything. It looks good, it looks easy, but it never is. Right.
So John, would you suggest most today are looking for potential franchisees that are going to develop 3, 5 locations, no matter what the business is, and they also all should have a franchise disclosure document that speaks to what has gone on, obviously, and some of the controls. Would you suggest that particular franchisee look into all of the resources, research and development, site development, all the resources that are out there before jumping into that particular group?
Yeah. Yes, I would, George. I would read through that franchise disclosure document. It can be intimidating. They can be, an inch thick or more. Ask a lot of questions. And then I would say, actually go talk to the franchisees in the business.
Yeah.
Go spend the day with them.
Yeah.
So I could talk all day about this, George, but here's a tip for the guy who's thinking about buying a franchise. And I did this and I thought it was fabulous. So 2 techniques. As you're making phone calls, in that disclosure document is a list of all the stores and all the owners in the brand today. They have to give you this, like their name or their phone number, their address, their email, whatever. So I made a worksheet. I came up with 10 questions I wanted to know about this brand. And not just how much money do you make, right? But what's it like? What's the training? What are the people? What's the competition? What about employees? What about this? What about that? I had 10 questions. So I made a worksheet, just copied it. I asked the same questions on every conversation. I talked to 10 people and I asked 10 questions. So by the time I did that, I could see some patterns because I was asking the same questions over and over and over. And so based on the responses after talking to 10 of them, this brand looked pretty good. Like, okay, you hear 5 out of 6 are terrible. Well, 2 out of 10 or whatever, what was the trend, right? So I would look for that. Then this one looked good. So, okay. So I went back to the corporate office and I asked them, who were the last 5 franchisee of the year for the last 5 years? Who were your 5? Like, who are the supers? I want to know. So I called all 5 of those. 3 of them were friendly and willing. And I said, I'm going to come spend the day with you. I'll buy you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I won't get in your way. I'll just want to shadow you. I want to learn the business from your perspective. I want to know everything I can about what you do to be successful. I did that 3 times. It took a while, right? I spent the day with the guy in Denver. I spent the day with the guy in Phoenix, a guy in North Carolina. And man, did I learn. So by the time I came through all of that, I knew what I was getting into. I knew the culture. I knew the business. I knew these guys because I had spent time with them. When I went to buy the franchise, I'm like, I'm ready. I know what I'm getting into. I knew a lot. I didn't know everything, but I had enough confidence. And then once I went through training, I well, I know how this works. I saw it here. I saw it there. And so it was much more the context. The training was like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. So I learned faster, I think. I learned, and I could then implement when I opened my store. I called my buddies now. They're my buddies. Hey, I bought the franchise. I'm in Minnesota. Oh yeah, let's go. Here's what you need to do. Do more of this, do less of that, whatever, so now I had these guys helping me. Of course, I wanted to be that franchisee of the year, and I was in that. It took me a few years, right? But I got there. But the message is do your homework, take your time, know the business, know the people, know the levers or mechanism, what's important in this business, what are the headaches in this business. Every business has its ups and downs and different factors. They're never, it's not always obvious, but there's always something that makes it a challenge. So figure out what that is and then learn about it. And can I do it? So I met these guys. I'm like, they seem like my kind of people. Like I can do what they do. They're not doing anything. I was like, oh, I'll never do that. Right. That would have been a red flag. And I might have not bought that franchise, right? Because they were doing something that was well beyond my comfort or my ability. So I'm never going to do that. Well, then that tells you don't buy that franchise.
Right.
It doesn't fit. So I knew I was a good fit and I really had a good understanding and I hit the ground running and I had a great run. I was in that brand for more than 10 years and had 17 stores and had a blast and sold it and went to work for the corporate office, which was even more fun, and positioned them to sell the whole brand. 5 years later, it was a beautiful outcome. So you know what you're doing before you commit.
Right.
The bottom
line. John, I tell you, this has been a great podcast, I think, and we could go on and on and on and on. Just listening to you, your enthusiasm about what you do, your love for helping people, reaching out, helping people, and watching things grow is just it resonates. So I want to thank you for being on our podcast today, and wish you all the success in the world. But make sure I let Jania know that we spoke, and she's a good friend. So I want to thank you. Is there any parting comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, George. I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story and try to inspire someone or help somebody. And if other people get it right, I think we all benefit from that. And glad to be a resource and just really appreciate the chance to share what I can and appreciate what you're doing and how you've taken your story and your opportunities and now creating a platform to help inspire and just share that blessing. So really, thank you. It's fun to be a small part of it.
Well, thank you. Well, like you, you get into this and you see the success that you can have, the hard work, the integrity that you put into it, and you want to share. You want to see other people successful with it. Not all franchise relationships are that great. But if you equally put into it, then it will be a great benefit to everyone. So thank you, and I appreciate you being with us, and wish you all the best.
Thanks very much. Same to you, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. The game isn't over. Your success story is just getting started. Head to tinsleyspeaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., a production of Live Stream Editors.